Hi, and welcome to Old School Blues Guitar. It is time for the Classic Licks lesson for January to March 2017. And this month's lesson is going to cover some of the things that I have taken from the playing of Tiny Grimes, who is one of the great jazz guitar players. He also was kind of a swing guitar player and every now and then a blues guitar player. But I like Tiny Grimes' playing because I can pick up a lot of jazz ideas that I can work into my playing. Now, I am not a jazz guitar player, so a lot of the things that Tiny Grimes does, I'm not really sure of. I'm working on it, learning some things. There's a guy named Tommy Harkenrider in California. He's got a bunch of videos on YouTube, and he's also got some lessons you can buy. And he really understands the Tiny Grimes stuff. But what I'm going to do is just show you, kind of for the lay blues guitar player, what are some simple ideas that you can take from Tiny Grimes and put in to blues playing or swing playing. And these are things that'll make your playing infinitely more interesting than just playing, the same old bends and the same old first position blues box runs and licks. And so what I'm going to do is, from now on with these classic licks lessons, instead of trying to do all these different videos for each guitar player, I'm just going to pick top 10. And I got to cut it off somewhere. It takes too long to do these, and it's really hard. And so I'm going to take the my top 10 favorite licks from Tiny Grimes. Now, all my other classic licks lessons, I'll leave them the way they are, but then any that I do from now on will follow this format. I will have the tab for these eventually. So let's start out. Tiny Grimes, if you don't know anything about him, he played a tenor guitar, which meant that he only had 4 strings. So he's only basically playing from the first to the 4th string. So when you listen to Tiny Grimes' playing, some of the things he does you can't really get unless you understand that. And you have to do some things differently. Now if you're playing all 6 strings, you can play it your way. But for now, I'm going to try to show you what I think Tiny Grimes was doing. There's some videos of him on YouTube where you can see him and some of the older stuff he does with his Rockin' Highlanders, which was his early band. That stuff's great. You can see a little bit of his playing. But anyway, we're going to start out with the easiest stuff, double stops. So if you're starting out playing, swing, blues, guitar, there's some great double stops that Tiny Grimes does, and they're all pretty simple. So let's start out. We're going to play in the key of B flat. We're going to use this key throughout this lesson because Tiny Grimes plays in B flat, or played in B flat. Whoops, got to turn on my amplifier. So we're in B flat, and if you're playing in the first position blues box, there's some double stops, and one of the simplest ones is just sliding on the 6th fret, 1st and 2nd string, sliding into it from the 5th fret. And Tiny Grimes a lot of times would do these little vamps along with the horns on his tunes, so something like. So there's kind of a double stop little vamp that you could use to back up somebody else or play as part of a solo. So what I'm doing is sliding into that, and then I'm going to pick it, and then bounce up and down between the 8th fret and the 6th fret of the 2nd string while picking the 1st and 2nd strings, the double stop. And then that little slide. When I pick the 8th fret of the 2nd string, I'm really trying just to pick that, but if you get a little bit of the 1st string, you get kind of more of a double stop sound. Tiny Grimes would use that same position and do stuff like this. Sort of an early rock and roll type thing. And so the first thing I'm going to show you from Tiny Grimes is just this basic kind of double stop lick, real simple stuff. If you listen to his tunes, he does that quite a bit. Another double stop idea that he does a lot is kind of a combination of things. And I'm going to go. He does a lot of licks like that, or. And there's one, if you listen to it, you hear Chuck Berry. I wonder if Chuck Berry listened to Tiny Grimes at all, because it sounds very similar. But anyway, I want to show you this one. And what I'm doing is with this double stop, got my pinky on the 9th fret of the 1st string, ring finger on the 8th fret of the 2nd string, 1st finger on the 6th fret, barring the 1st and 2nd string. And that little double stop all by itself Tiny Grimes would do stuff like that a lot, just using that double stop. So there's one you can use, but that whole lick. So what I'm doing is back to that double stop, and then I'm coming down on the 8th fret, 1st and 2nd string. Back to that, to the 1st and 2nd strings on the 6th fret. And then I'm getting the 8th fret of the 2nd and 3rd string. And then I'm flattening my 1st finger on the 6th fret, 2nd and 3rd strings. I'm picking it and then bringing my 2nd finger down on the 7th fret of the 3rd string. But when I pick the 3rd string, I'm getting the 2nd string too. It's all double stops. Something like that. And you can combine these in all kinds of ways. And so this one is one you probably commonly play over the 1, but you could play it over the 4, you could play it almost anywhere. And you could do some variations. So instead of doing this, I could do this. Or I could do something like this. Just think that's just something spur of the moment, but combining those. And so there's a whole group of double stops in that 1st position blues box, and you'll hear Tiny Grimes use those a lot. This little lick, that's one that I just recall. I can't remember what tune that's from. He does a lot of great songs, and I'll recommend some to listen to, at least some of the songs where I got these licks from here at the end. So there is the second example of a Tiny Grimes idea in B flat. We're going to look at some double stops played over the 4. So in the songs, you'll be on the 1, B flat. When you go to the 4, the E flat. And then a lot of times he'll do this. Whoops. He'll do these licks over what basically is an E flat chord, E flat 9. And what I'm doing is just look at that bar chord shape. That's an E flat bar chord, same as this. And what I'm doing, my main area is between on the 2nd and 3rd strings, between the 6th and the 8th fret. And you'll hear him do a lot of licks where he goes back and forth between those. But he also sounds like he throws in the 8th fret of the 4th string. Something like that. And then I got this same double stop on the 1st and 2nd strings, 8th fret, 6th fret. So I've got those areas. And he does that a lot of times when he's playing over the 4. He'll do little melodies. So it's like this. And maybe he'll throw in the first, little single string run in between there. So those double stop ideas over the 4, and then back into the 1. So there's another simple Tiny Grimes idea. Tiny Grimes idea that I have is what I call playing over the long A shape. So if we're in B flat, a long B flat would be like this. And a lot of times you'll hear him playing notes like this. Something like that. So instead of playing over the 1st position blues box, he's actually playing over that shape. And what I'm doing, here's my B flat. I'm going from the 3rd to the 5th fret on the 4th string and the 3rd string. That's the main notes. You can play a lot of little melodies just on that. And then a lot of times he'll throw in the slide to the 5th fret to the 6th fret on the 3rd string, so something like this. of times he'll go from that back to the first position blues box scale. And play some melodies there. So whatever key you're in, if you're in B flat, just go to the minor. So B flat, the relative minor, I think is what they call it, is a G minor. So you're playing over that. Or you can think of it like this, playing over the long chord shape. So if you're playing in C, you can do the same thing by playing over the A or the long C. So that's something that I picked up, and what's nice about that is when you're playing a solo, it's just not all the treble strength. You can work in some of the bassier strings. Now remember, Tiny Grimes played from the 4th string down. That's all he had. So if you listen to his stuff, if he wants to get any lower on the bass note, so if he's in B flat, he's just got to go further down the neck on the 4th string and do things using that, what he had available, those 4 strings. So there's the 4th Tiny Grimes Classic Licks idea. Little double stop melody type thing that he does in a couple songs, Marching Along, I think, and Frankie and Johnny Boogie. It's in B flat, and this is what I'm talking about. And that's just a neat little thing that I've heard Tiny Grimes do in a couple different songs. He's going to this, which is a B flat double stop over the 2nd position, B flat bar chord. So my first finger is on the 13th fret of the 1st string, my ring finger is on the 15th fret of the 2nd string. So he's doing that twice, letting it ring. And then to this, which is another double stop, 15th fret of the 1st string, 16th fret of the 2nd string, back, and then this is the same position as that, but at the 10th and 11th fret. So that whole little thing. And then that last little chord thing is a B flat 9th, and what I'm doing is just sliding, really with one finger, with the other finger is just balancing it out from the 12th to the 13th fret twice and really letting it ring out, even smearing it a little bit down the neck. So one more time. Whoops, do that again. That's just cool. That's a neat little combination of double stops and chords and playing the melody, making a little melodic thing with the double stops. And that's another thing that Tiny Grimes does on quite a few songs that I've kind of picked up on. So if you're playing in any key, you just find the 2nd position bar chord. So let's say we're playing in G. Here's the 2nd position bar chord, G. We got this. We can play something like that, or do all kinds of variations with that. So that's number 5. Tiny Grimes idea number 6 that I really like, and I actually learned this from a guy named Tommy Harkenrider, who I sent him a message and requested that he show me what Tiny Grimes was doing here, and it's really a lot easier than what I ever dreamed. Sometimes when he gets in a song like in B flat and he gets to the 5, he'll do something like this. Let me play it through one time. Or something like that. So what I'm doing is when I get to the 5, which is an F, I'm playing this double stop. And that's just over the F9th or F7th, whatever the song is. So I'm starting on the 4th fret, 3rd fret of the 4th string. And then I've got my first finger anchored on the 1st fret, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd strings. Then I'm going to hammer on my 2nd finger to the 3rd fret of the 2nd string while picking, or the 3rd string while picking the 2nd string too. Then I'm going to flatten my finger, ring finger out on the 3rd fret of the second and third string. Something like that. That's one way you can do it. I've also heard Tiny Grimes do something like that to lead into this. So I'm just going to that double stop with my pinky on the 4th fret of the 1st string, ring finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, and then 1st fret, 1st and 2nd string, 2nd and 3rd strings on the 3rd fret, that little hammer on, and wind up on the 3rd fret of the 4th string. So, or, and then this little thing, which is just cool. And again, I learned this from another player. So what I've got is my pinky on the 3rd fret of the 3rd string and my 1st finger on the 1st fret of the 4th string. And I'm just walking the finger, or you can use one finger, like this. Lots of different ways you can do that. And then that takes us to the 1, and then when he gets to the 1, he does stuff like little bassy stringer on, or all kinds of different variations that you can do. So let me just play that through one time. So this idea, we get to the 5, back to the 1. So that Tiny Grimes lick, listen to Marching Along and Frankie and Johnny Boogie, those are the two where I hear this the most. And the variation, sometimes it sounds like he does this. This is another little thing he does. And what I've got here is my 1st finger on the B flat, 3rd fret, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings mostly. And then I'm taking my 1st and 2nd and 3rd fingers and putting them on. My 2nd finger is going to be on the 4th fret of the 2nd string, and my ring finger is on the 5th fret of the 4th string. Whoops. That little lick, and he does that quite a bit. Sometimes he does something like this. Goes right to that instead of playing. So he goes like this. And then into the song. You can do it both ways. But this little thing, I love that. And that's going from this B flat. So if you were going to play it in a different key, like C, you could do it here. You can move that around in a few different places, but Tiny Grimes, like the key of B flat for that lick. That's number 6. Tiny Grimes' idea is a little thing he does with chords, and again, I can't remember the exact song. Thinking Marching Along or Frankie and Johnny Boogie, those are the two that I've listened to the most. And the tune is in B flat, and he's playing a solo, and all of a sudden he does this little chord thing, something like this. And then into the 4. And what I'm hearing, it's really neat, is he's using a B flat 9. And I have to remember that Tiny Grimes only had the 4 strings, so I have to pick it string down, but when I'm playing a standard 6-string guitar, I can throw in the 5th string as well and make it sound a little more full. So he just uses chords as kind of a solo lick. So he's playing a B flat 9, and he does this little strumming pattern, something like that, and then E flat 9. Again, if you want to play it like Tiny Grimes did, he's only using those strings. So the 2nd position 9th chord, I always use my 2nd finger on the root and then play like this, but Tiny Grimes didn't have that, so he probably played it something like this. That's another way you can play the 2nd position 9. So that's an E flat 9. So he's doing this. B flat 9th, and then lesson of the month for this chord. It's a seventh. So instead of this, you got this. Sounds almost like an add ninth, but I don't think it's an add ninth chord. And what I'm doing is I'm making a D shape over the B flat first position bar chord, and then throwing my pinky on the 7th or the 8th fret of the first string. So the D shape is on the 4th through the 3rd, 2nd strings. First finger on the 6th fret of the 4th string, ring finger on the 7th fret of the 3rd string, second finger, first finger, second finger on the first finger, 4th string, 6th fret. Ring finger, 7th fret, 3rd string. Second finger is on the 6th fret of the 2nd string. And then the pinky there. So he does this like. Which I think is really neat, how you can make a solo lick using chords. And that's something, if you listen to Junior Watson and some other West Coast guitar players, they do this a lot today, and that's why I really like that kind of sound. So that's our 7th Tiny Grimes idea. We're going to venture into the second blues box, which he doesn't do a whole lot as far as what I've listened to. So we got here, and then here's the second blues box. And for B flat, we've got the 9th fret to the 11th fret on the first string, and the 9th to 11th on the second string. That are, we play a lot of stuff in there. Now here he does this lick, goes like this. Something like that. And what he's doing, he's picking this, which is really a B flat note. 11th fret of the 2nd string, and instead of doing your traditional blues bend in the second blues box, he's moving those fingers down a fret, and he's really picking the 12th fret of the first string. And he does stuff like that, varying the bends and how he holds it. And there's one he does where he lets it just hang. He does that with some different stuff in his playing, which is really cool. So I'm picking the B flat note, 11th fret, and then bending up on the 12th fret of the first string. I use 3 fingers. I'm not sure how he played it, but that's just how I play it. Whoop. You can go back to the second blues box. I'm going to do that again. Play something like that. So just for that, that's kind of a neat idea. So we find B flat, second position blues box, the B flat note, and there's that lick. So if we're playing an A, second position blues box, A, got that lick right there. You can play it in G, you can play it in all kinds of different keys. And I like to throw that in. It's got kind of a different sound to it. So that's Tiny Grimes lick number 8. Little string run. I haven't done many of those in this lesson. I'll try to do some more later. But Tiny Grimes does this in a couple different songs. And I can't remember exactly which one, but here at the end I'll list the songs that I pulled these from. And he does almost like a Charlie Christian thing. He does this. So we're in B flat, you hear this. Something like that, where he winds up with this descending chromatic run from the 8th fret to the 7th to the 6th on the 4th string. So he leads into it, just coming down the B flat blues box, 9th fret, 8th fret, 6th fret on the 1st string. Same thing on the 2nd string. And then 8th fret, 3rd string, 6, 7 on the 3rd string. It's kind of a neat idea, so it's something like that. I just like how he does that. A lot of times when I've heard it, he plays it over the 1. Mix up the speed and which notes you accent and all that stuff too. So there's another kind of a single string Tiny Grimes idea in B flat, and I use that. Pee Wee Crayton does a lot of that when he plays, so that kind of thing. It's a Charlie Christian, that kind of thing. But Tiny Grimes doesn't. I haven't heard him do that. More of that kind of thing. All right, that's number 9. Let's move on to the last one. Last Tiny Grimes idea. He does these things, I call them chord shifts or shifting chords, which are really pretty awesome. And I'm going to show you, I know this is supposed to be one lick, but I'm going to show you a couple different variations on this. One of the most basic ones is playing with this B flat 7th shape. Sometimes people call this the Freddie King chord. I call it the Freddie King chord, also the Hideaway chord, or the Earl Hooker. Since Earl Hooker used this chord a lot too. And in B flat, what I'm doing is I've got my first finger on the 3rd fret, 1st and 2nd strings. My pinky is on the 6th fret of the 1st string. So, and then my 2nd finger is on the 5th fret of the 3rd string. Pinky's on the 1st string. And then my ring finger is on the 6th fret of the 4th string. So it sounds like this. You'll hear Tiny Grimes do these little shifts where he does something like this. Which is really neat. And I'm not sure exactly what he's doing sometimes, but that's kind of a basic version. I've seen other guys teach and heard this before. So I'm going from this chord, and then I'm moving my first finger, keeping everything else the same, moving my first finger to the 4th fret of the 2nd string. So it's... chord. I've got my first finger on the 5th fret of the 4th string. I've got my 2nd finger on the 5th fret of the 2nd string. And then I've got my ring finger on the 6th fret of the 3rd string. And my pinky on the 6th fret of the 1st string. So we've got this. I think actually on that second part, sounds like the first finger is kind of getting the 1st string a little bit. And then the diminished. And then back to the 1, which could be a B flat major, or it could be another, go back to this chord. Do all kinds of neat stuff with that idea. So... another kind of thing that I hear Tiny Grimes, and I really like this one, is when he's in B flat, does something like this. That is, Junior Watson is the guy that plays now. I've heard him do this. And there's a version of the Hucklebuck he does with Canned Heat, and this lick's in there. I'm pretty sure that's where I got it from. So this time he's taking the B flat diminished, played here with my first finger on the 8th fret of the 4th string. Same chord shape that we had here. And if you know anything about these diminished chords, you can move them 1, 2, 3, all the way up and down the neck. So I'm just going from here. That's my first leg. And then right here, this chord, I've got my first pinky in the same spot on the 6th fret of the 1st string. Got my first finger on the 4th fret of the 2nd string. Then I've got my 2 middle fingers. My 2nd finger is on the 5th fret of the 4th string, and my ring finger is on the 5th fret of the 3rd string. So we're doing this. Whoops, starting here. And then to that diminished. So it's from here. Back to the 1. So here it is. You can do a lot of different cool stuff with that chord shift. And so he's doing these shifts, and it's just neat. And you listen to Tiny Grimes carefully, and you'll hear him do some other variations. But if I remember right, most of them use those positions. So here, the diminished, this, whatever that is. With those ideas. So there are 10 licks and ideas and things that I have taken from the playing of Tiny Grimes. Now he does a lot of sophisticated stuff. There's some really complicated licks, and eventually I'll come back with a part 2 of this once I figure out some of these things. And again, the value of working some Tiny Grimes into your playing is that it just adds some flavor. A lot of blues players are just playing single string runs and bends and same old stuff. Mix in double stops and chords and chord shifts and some different scales, and your playing will sound a lot more interesting. At least I think so. So I hope you enjoyed this lesson. Again, these were my top 10 or 10 of my top Tiny Grimes ideas that I borrowed, and that's how I'm going to do these classic licks lessons from now on. And maybe I'll come back with a part 2 eventually, but this makes it easier for me to tab these out, and I don't have to spend hours and hours and hours listening to the stuff and figuring it out. Alright, I'll see you again in a couple months, and I'll come up with another guitar player to steal some licks from. See you then.